Today in this video, I'm going to discuss an exciting new feature I've added to ScrapPage Pro, and that is the ability to have ScrapPage utilize the data that you already have in your Ancestry.com database. So, how do we go about doing it? Well, it's pretty simple actually. The first thing you have to do is you have to get your Ancestry data. Now, if you're not familiar with how to do this, there is a procedure in Ancestry that lets you click on any of your tree tabs and you select a tree. And then from the menu, you click to select Export that tree, and then right-click on the download button, and you can save it as any name you want. Now, that saves what's called a GEDCOM file. And we're going to use ScrapPage Pro to extract information from it, because this is what a GEDCOM file actually looks like. You can see that buried in here there are some names and things and dates and places, but the problem is it's not very readable. It's a file. It's a standard file that's used in the Ancestry world to define people's heritage trees. So what do we do with this? Well, in ScrapPage, what I've done is I go in and I extract the pertinent information for these fields. Now, that's not every single field that's in the file, and if there was a note attached to this, the notes file would show up as well. But anyways, you can see I extract the name, the sex, the place born, date born, and on down the line, children of that person, spouse. And if there was a marriage date and a married at location given, those would be included here, but for this particular record there wasn't, but the father and the mother were. So that's the information that ScrapPage extracts when it does it. So how does it do it? Well, here's what we want to do. We're going to open up ScrapPage and I'll show you real quickly how you do this. So first thing we want to do is we're going to start another page. And I'll go in here and use something like about an 8x12. That always works out fairly nicely. Now, to make it look nice, keep in mind that ScrapPage isn't really here to replace Ancestry. It's here to augment your Ancestry data and allow you to present it in a very eye-pleasing and very highly interactive way that you can share with anybody. And there's no need for them to have an Ancestry account or anything like that to do it. So what I'm going to do is first off, I'm going to create my background, and I'll give it a standard texture. You just want to make this thing look sort of attractive. So there's a kind of a really knock you out in the face kind of a background, but on top of that, I'm going to place a panel, and I'm just going to put this panel down here, something like this. It's not critical. You can place it wherever you want, and it can be any color, but I'll give it this and choose another texture from the standard textures that come with ScrapPage. I'll choose this pastel here. So there, now we've got this, and we can use this as our backdrop. So the first thing I think I'll do is I'll just tell it, hey, I want to flatten this, and that'll give me that as my background. Okay, so that's the background I'm going to be working with on all these pages now. So the next thing to do is I'm going to go under Action, and under the Action menu now there's a new item, and it's called Family Database. So if you click on that, it opens up this dialog box. Now remember, if you've downloaded your GEDCOM file, the GEDCOM as it comes is pretty much unreadable. But if we go in here and we say, hey, I want to extract a GEDCOM, and we go to where they might be. Here I have them under Ancestry example. Here's a few GEDCOMs that I've got downloaded. One is for my family tree on my mother's side. So we'll just open that up. And when we do, now we can search on it. So with my last name, Fitzpatrick, I'll just type in F-I-T and tell it to go. And there I am, the third item down on that list. So I'll click on that and I'll tell it, hey, I want it to build a tree. And I can build the tree, I can populate a tree if I want, that would be, and I default it to that so that it will populate names and information into the tree. But you don't have to. If you tell it not to, it will just draw the tree and not populate it. So anyway, you can list the number of generations that you want to show up to 6. Anything above that really gets beyond readable on the page. So we want to probably, if you want to go higher than that in generations, linking pages is a good way to do it. And I'll show you a little bit about how to do that in a minute. Anyway, I can tell it to build an auto tree for me. So when I do, it's doing some calculations in the background in there. Now it built the tree. So you can see here I am, my father, my mother, my grandparents, and great-grandparents on down the line. It also places on here a text box, a text holder. Now, if you're not familiar with these things in ScrapPage, they are a place for displaying text that you're going to link from various links on the page. Now, each one of these items out here is already linked to some data. That is, whatever data is in that GEDCOM file that relates to myself or my father or my mother or grandparents or anybody else. So the data is already there. You can place this thing anywhere you want. You might want to stick it up here in the corner so it's not walking over too much, because you'll see in a minute how it works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a action page, a ScrapPage action page. And if you're not familiar with the action pages of ScrapPage, they're simply web pages. They're HTML5 web pages that will display in any browser. And that makes them universal for being able to be shared with anybody that has a computer, whether that be a Mac or a PC, doesn't matter. So anyway, up here under Media, if I click that down, it gives me the option of building an action page. So I'll do that. And when this comes up here, I'm going to build this page for local viewing. That means I'm not going to stick it up on the internet just yet. I could, but I'm going to keep it at the local level for right now. So if I build it, if you've watched me do any of these videos before, you know I always keep a thing around I call test HTML. That's just to see how things are going, if the page is functioning the way I think it should. So I'm going to stick with that test, and now it tells me it's already there, and yeah, I'll go ahead and overwrite it. So the build is complete. Now I can view that page. All right, so there's the page we made. Now, what does it do? Well, as I said, each one of these nodes is hot. That is, it's got some data attached to it. For instance, in my case, if I bring it up, there's my name, my sex, my place of birth, and date of birth. I haven't died yet, so there's nothing there. I had some wives, as you'll see later. Anyway, there's my children, and on down the line, there's my mother and my father. Okay. Now I can turn that text off and recall it anytime I want. But if I call it up for my father, for instance, there it is for him. He was born in 1918. He died in 1999. He was married to my mother, Aurelia, and he had 4 children, one of which is me. And his mother and father are listed there. Fitzpatrick Joseph Edward was his father. My dad's name was Fitzpatrick Edward Joseph, just the other way around. So anyhow, if you want to see some really prolific, my grandmother and grandfather, they had quite a few children. I see 15 of them there. So anyway, this is the information that gets called up from each one of these. So now you can have tons and tons of information in an album of these things, because you can link these pages together. And to show how these things might be linked, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down for a second. And I'm going to go in here and look at ScrapPage again. And now I'm going to bring in another GEDCOM file. So let's extract another different GEDCOM file. There's a kind of a famous one that runs around. It's the British Royalty. So if I open that up, and it's going to go ahead and do it. It's done extracting the information now. So now if I go in here and I search on, say, Windsor, W-I-N is be enough to find that. There's all the Windsor family. And in here you can see, for instance, that there's Prince Charles. So let's take him as a starting point. Now let's make it a 5-gen tree this time. So I'll tell it to go ahead and build a new tree of Prince Charles. Now the information that I had in there from my other tree is going to be erased. So it's going to be replaced with Prince Charles's information. So I'll tell it to build this auto tree. It'll take just a little bit of time there until it does. So there it comes up like that. Now you can see that, okay, here's Prince Charles, and here's Prince Philip, his father, and Queen Elizabeth, his mother, and King George VI, his grandfather, and on down the line. So again, we can put the text box anywhere we want. Doesn't matter. You can make it big, you can make it small. Doesn't make any difference. It'll scroll as needed to show the information. So for now, let's just set it up here, something like this. And I think what I'm going to do also is I'm going to add another text box down here just so this page has some identification. And we'll say that this is for Prince Charles. And to make it pretty, because he is, after all, he's royalty, so we'll make it a an Edwardian script kind of file. And we'll set it somewhere about like that, maybe pop it up in size just a little bit. And well, while we're at it, let's just change its color to one of the saved stored colors that I have here. So there, now we got his name in there, and we got his family tree out 5 generations from him. So we can build this page, and I think what I'll go ahead and do is build it. Now, wait a minute, hold on. Before I do that, what if I wanted to go deeper? And I told you how I'd show you to do some page linking. Well, here's Edward VII is the farthest so we go back on this particular page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button. And these buttons will let you proceed further by linking pages to them. Now right here I have a round pointer. I know these pointers are used in a lot of family tree programs to say, hey, I got more information to go to. So let's just set this over here by Edward. And we'll put that right there. And I'm going to link that to a page. And it's a page I haven't made yet, but that's okay because I know what I'm going to call it when I'm done. So I'm going to link it to something that I'm going to call Edward VII. Now, it's a good idea to also establish some kind of a standard that you use for naming things. Like whenever I have a space, I always put an underscore just because it's a thing I like to do. You can do your own. You could use a hyphen or anything else, or just nothing at all. But it works out very nicely with an underscore, so that's what I do. So I'll tell it, okay, that button is going to be linked to a page called Edward VII. Now, I haven't built that page yet. I haven't even built this page yet, but here's how simple it is to do. Under Media, we come down here and we say, just like we did before, we're going to build an action page. Now, this time, I'm going to call this page Prince Charles. Underscore Charles. All right, so I kept with the underscore protocol that I set up. And now I'm going to use Prince Charles as the name of this page. So I'm going to save it. And if I want to view it, I can view it. And there it is. It doesn't link yet to this. Or if it does actually, but it would find an error because there's no page out there like that. But I can still look at Edward's information. So there's Edward's information right there. And as you can see, you know, his mother was Queen Victoria. So anyhow, we've now got this information for Charles and for there's Queen Elizabeth's information there, her 4 children and who she's married to. Philip, and her father was George VI. So anyway, we've got this information now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to return to ScrapPage. Now remember, I was going to build a page here that was going to expand out from Edward the 6th or 7th. So to do that, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to open the database again. And in here now, I'm going to go back to Wetton, since his last name was actually a little odd for the generational tree, but it was in between Hanover and Windsor. Anyway, we can look him up, and now 5 generations of him, I can build a tree and tell it to go ahead and do it. All right, so now it's going to build Edward VII's tree, and there it is. And you can see that his mother over here is Queen Victoria, and his father was, what the heck was his name? I forget now. Oh, yeah, Albert. That's right, Albert Augustus Charles. Anyway, Queen Victoria is the lineage that follows back through George III and all of those. So obviously we want to change his name down here now, so we'll say that this is going to be Edward VII. So his page is going to be called that now, obviously. And also I want a way to get back to where I came from. So I'm going to add a button. Let's go ahead and change his name. And I'm going to add a button now. And that looks a little weird, so let's just take that back to Arial and leave it at that. And we'll stick it up here someplace. Now I'm going to add a button to get back to where I want to go, and you'll see what I do with this in just a second too. I'll call it my home button. I'll bring it in. It comes in very huge, but we'll scale it down in size and set it down here, and we'll color it just to make it evident. So we'll call this our home button, and that is going to be linked backwards to the page where I came from, which was Prince Charles. So that'll link back to Prince Charles's page. Okay, so now I got a page that I could use. Also, I want to get rid of this button over here now. I'm just going to kill it off because I don't want to go back to this same page that I just came from. All right, so now each one of these have information about the particular person that's in that node, just like before, and this button will let me go back to Prince Charles's home page. Now, as I mentioned, each one of these comes up as a pop-up text when they're put in. So ScrapPage inserts the information that will be used to show in this text holder. But you don't have to leave it that way if you don't want to. And I'll show you how to do that real quick here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, I'm going to remove that link. All right, so now she no longer has a link, but I can give her another link. And the link I'm going to give is going to be another page link, and we'll call it Victoria Children. How's that? All right, so when you click on this now, you don't get the information up in this text box. You get it to go to her children, or a page that's going to describe her children. Okay? Now, that page has not been created yet, but if I go ahead and build this page, and I'm going to call it Edward the 7th, and save it. Now, if I view it, it'll come up like this, and there's all the information on these fellas. But she's going to give me an error if I click on her, okay? File not found because I didn't create that page yet. This will, however, take me back to Prince Charles, okay? And if I use this button here, I go back to Edward VII. But let's go back into ScrapPage now, and I'm going to go back to my family tree database, and let's go back into the Hanovers where Victoria lived. And we'll go down here and find Hanover, Victoria, and there it is. Now this time I'm going to create a tree that's going to be her children. Okay, so let's do this. So there, now we have the information, or the children of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. So to make this page be workable, first off I'm going to change the name here from Edward VII, obviously. We'll stick it up here and give it some room to retype itself, and let's call it Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, and tell it okay. So now we've got this text box a little bit in the way there, but you can see now we've got to fit that in there. It doesn't quite fit, so let's scale it down in size till it does. Yeah, there we go. Now it works. All right, so anyhow, now let's put our text box back up here. It won't show except if we click on one of these names. So what else do we have to do to make this page right? Well, obviously, I think I want to make this so it jumps back to where it came from rather than going all the way home. So I'm going to get rid of this button here. And I'm going to add another button. And this button is going to just be called a back button. You could make anything you want to be these buttons, by the way. It's just that there are several of them that are already available to play with. So let's give it a color. We'll use the color we've been doing everything with. Now, this guy, what I want to do is I want to make him have a page link, but I want him to go back to Edward VII. So we'll have him go back to Edward VII. All right? And we tell it yes, and now that's where it will jump back to. Now, so we've got a page here for Victoria and her children, and one with with Prince Albert as well. But we might want to add something a little bit more classy to this. So let's say we start with a photo or a photo holder. Now, if you're not familiar with these, this text holder is a media holder. There are many other kind of media holders that are available, one of which is something called a photo holder. All right, so if it brings in a photo holder, I'm going to set it, let's say down here so that it's kind of centered sort of for where these guys are going to be. And now remember, right now, this is text linked to a pop-up text of Queen Victoria, but it doesn't have to be that way because her information is all down here. Here's all of her children down here. So let's take and remove that link, but at the same time, replace it with something called a pop-up photo. And here we can add a picture of Queen Victoria. Okay, it'll letterbox a little bit out here. Doesn't have to. I guess we could I could crop the thing with the ratio holder so that it doesn't letterbox, and maybe I'll do that. I'll just go ahead and just grab this portion of her here. So we'll tell it to do the crop. So now she's going to fill in that whole thing pretty well. I'm going to add a closing X to it because I do want it to be, and I'm put a white border around it as well. So I do want this thing to have a bounding rectangle. I don't want it to be visible at startup. I want this thing to act as a pop-up. So we'll go ahead and tell it now that that's the way we really want it to be. All right. Secondly, we can go over here and we can look at Prince Albert. And I'm going to remove his text link as well. But I'm going to give him a photo link also. And here's a photo of Prince Albert. And we're going to have to crop him as well. We'll crop him with the holder ratio again, just like we did Queen Victoria. And we'll just capture that much of this picture of him. So we'll do the crop, and there he is. Again, it's going to have a closing X. It's going to have a little rectangle around the image, and it's going to not be visible at startup. Okay, so now we've done that page. So now having done that, what do? Well, it's just like before. We go in here now, and we build an action page. And the action page is going to be named, what we decided would be Victoria's Children. So when I make that page, I save it. And now when we have it built, I can go ahead and view that page. And there it is. Now, just so you know, we could pop up these pictures. There's the picture of Queen Victoria, and there's a picture of Prince Albert. We can shut them off anytime we want. If we want to see information on any of these people, or any of her children, for instance, King Edward. And here he was born then. Here's his children. His mother and father were Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Okay, so that information is available for any of these pop-ups, except for the two that we replaced by photos. Now, we can take this thing back to where it came from, which was back to Prince Edward, or King Edward, rather, the 7th. And here's his information. And if we clicked on Victoria, it would go to her page. And again, we can bring it back to there, and we can take it home to Prince Charles. And then at Prince Charles level, we could look at anything we wanted. If for whatever reason you wanted to see some details on, well, let's go forward to Prince Edward again, or King Edward again. And if we wanted to see, say, some information on King George III, there's King George III. His information, as you can see, he had a lot of children, and one of which happened to be this Hanover lineage with Edward, which eventually became the lineage that brought Queen Victoria to the stage. And there's her page again. So you can link many pages together this way. You can carry all kinds of information. Each page could be linked to anything you wanted. And you could have photos, you could have text pop-ups like we had. You can have scrolling photos. There's all kinds of possibilities of things you can add to these pages. But I just wanted to show you in this video how you can extract information from your existing info that's in your Ancestry.com tree and bring it into ScrapPage and use it for building trees almost effortlessly. So until the next time, this is Dave with Media Digitronics. Bye-bye.